So a lot of people choose Android phones because you have a lot of options, not just with the phone, but of course with the earbuds and also with smartwatches. But now it's kind of a weird time. If you're trying to buy a smartwatch that is a general utility smartwatch, that is not one that's hyper-focused on fitness or something like that, then you really only have two options. So on one hand, you have the Galaxy Watch 4 and Galaxy Watch 4 Classic, which just came out. And on the other hand, we have the TicWatch Pro 3, and the more budget-friendly alternative, the E3. But looking at the TicWatch Pro 3, I want to compare that to the Galaxy Watch 4 in this video. But first, I want to explain why these are the only two options. So I first mentioned that if you are somebody who's hyper-focused on fitness or something like that, then there are other ones like Garmin watches and Polar and things like that. But for anybody who wants, say, a voice assistant, an email, and all the usual stuff, and the ability to get apps on your watch, then these are the main options here. And the reason that these are the main options is because anything older, like older Samsung watches or older WearOS watches, are not going to get an update. So Google and Samsung announced a partnership with the new WearOS 3, and essentially what's going on here is anything older doesn't get that update. So assuming you want a watch that is going to have continued support, these are your options right here. And so looking at these watches, you'll see that at first glance, they're not especially different. They're a similar size, a relatively similar aesthetic, but there really are some pretty major differences with these watches. And of course, in this video, we'll get into some accuracy testing with the heart rate and sensors like that. We'll get into some testing of the microphone. I'll show you the interface, but let's first kind of take a step back and just take a look at the design. Now, you'll notice that between these two designs, there are some pretty big differences. Starting off with the overall design of the Galaxy Watch 4, you're gonna see the build is a lot more premium. It comes at a higher price tag, but you're getting a mechanical rotating bezel, which I always say is really nice. A lot of people love it. Once you try it, I think it's a really fantastic feature on here. It's also an all stainless steel build, so it feels a little heavier, but that kind of ties in with the more premium design of the watch. The TicWatch, on the other hand, doesn't have any kind of rotating crown or bezel. That's always been its biggest drawback, and the overall design is mostly plastic, which makes it lighter, and I can see the advantage in that, but it doesn't feel quite as premium. You'll see that they both just have two buttons. The buttons on the Galaxy Watch double as health sensors, and we'll talk about that in the health sensor segment of this video. But otherwise, you'll see that they both have a similar display, 1.4 inches. It's an AMOLED display in both of them, actually a Super AMOLED on the Galaxy. But realistically, using these outside, they're both going to be fantastic displays, about 450 by 450 pixels. Like really, for all intensive purposes, almost an identical display here. But what's not identical is a big advantage for the TicWatch. And when you look at this, you'll see once the screen times out, you get a second display. So the advantages of this are twofold. The first one is that I think it kind of looks cool that you don't have to have a black circle on your wrist when you're not looking at the watch. Instead, you have this kind of LCD display that's going to show you the time and the heart rate and the date and things like that. And of course, when you're working out and you're not looking at it, or if you don't want to have to worry about flipping your wrist a lot, it also shows you like your time there, the distance, your heart rate, some basic things like that. Now, on the flip side, you might say, well, Mike, you can get an always-on display with the Galaxy Watch. And while that's true, the second advantage of having this second display here is that it does save the battery pretty substantially. So the battery life on the TicWatch for this, among other reasons, is substantially longer than that of the Galaxy Watch. So I'm going to talk more about the internals later in this video. But looking at the batteries, the Galaxy Watch, you can definitely get through one day. You're really lucky if you get through a second day. It means you probably didn't use any GPS at all. So in most situations, it's really like a 1 to 1.5 day watch. Whereas the TicWatch, I've had as much as 4 days on this, maybe even more than that. But in most situations, I'm getting a comfortable 3 days out of this watch. But if we flip the watches over, you'll see on the back, we have our little array of health sensors. Again, I will test out the accuracy, but on the side, you'll notice that the microphone, the speaker, things like that are a little bit more subtle on the Galaxy Watch because it has that all stainless steel build, but that little kind of black edge on the bottom is where they hide a lot of those sensors. And I think that was a really good move. It makes it look cleaner. It makes it look more like an analog timepiece. Whereas on the TicWatch, you'll see the speakers are very obvious on the left side, the microphone very obvious on the right side. And so I think aesthetically, the clear winner here is the Galaxy Watch, although you do have that major advantage of having the second display on the TicWatch. Now with that being said, let's actually get into a microphone and speaker test because these do both have the ability to use them for phone calls or voice assistant, among many other things. What's the weather in Tallahassee?
Currently in Tallahassee, it's 78 degrees and partly cloudy. Today, there'll be thunderstorms with a forecasted high of 82 and a low of 74.
What's the weather in Tallahassee?
In Tallahassee, Florida, it is partly cloudy and 78 degrees right now.
Alright, so first up, this is the TicWatch Pro 3. This is what the microphone sounds like. I'm just holding it at a normal distance, talking as if I were on the phone. So leave a comment and let me know if you can hear what I'm saying. Now this is a microphone test with the Samsung Galaxy Watch 4. Again, leave a comment and let me know if you can hear what I'm saying. When it comes to charging these watches, I think the Galaxy has a pretty substantial advantage here. While they both come with the charger in the box, the Galaxy Watch is also capable of Qi wireless charging, which means that if you place it on the back of a flagship Android phone, you can charge it up using your phone's battery. You might have also noticed the default straps that came with these watches are very different, and between the two of them, I definitely prefer that of the TicWatch. So first of all, it's a 22mm strap, which I think is the right size for a watch of this body shape, this body size being 47mm. You really need a 22mm strap. Now, it's supposed to look like fake leather, and I mean, I think they kind of did an okay job of that. I would definitely recommend getting a third-party strap, but just right off the bat, it's a very standard strap that flexes the normal angles there. Now, looking at the Galaxy Watch, the reason I mentioned how far that flexes is because I kind of complained the Galaxy Watch, they don't bend down more than like maybe 30 degrees below the horizontal there. And so if you have a narrower wrist, you're gonna have a hard time fitting this on with the default strap. So instead you can just go and get a different strap, but this is 20mm, which I think any straps you buy that are 20mm are going to look a little bit too thin for a watch of this size. So next I want to talk about the configurations you can get with these watches. First of all, the TicWatch was released at $300, but now you're definitely going to find it for $250 or even less dollars than that. The Galaxy Watch has many different configurations, unlike the TicWatch, and so you have obviously the classic or the regular Galaxy Watch, and then within each of those you have a smaller and a larger version. And of course on top of that you also have LTE variants, so the price can range anywhere from $250 for the smallest Galaxy Watch regular, all the way up to like over $400 for the larger Galaxy Watch Classic if you get LTE. Now before we take a look at the interface, I want to talk about what's under the hood with these watches. We talked about the battery life being longer on the TicWatch, and one of the reasons was that display, but another one is the chip on board. So this is using the Snapdragon 4100, while the Samsung Watch is using their Exynos W920. Now an advantage of the Galaxy Watch, however, is that you do have more storage on here with 16 gigabytes versus 8, and you have 1.5 gigabytes of RAM versus 1 gigabyte on the TicWatch. So I started off by restarting both watches, and then when you go down, honestly, I have to say I like the Galaxy's layout better, having 3 apps in a row, but you can see that the Samsung Galaxy actually opened apps substantially quicker. Every app I tried was opened much sooner on the Galaxy than it was on the TicWatch, despite the TicWatch running the Snapdragon 4100. Now, as far as features go on these watches, this is extremely interesting because it's really built on a lot of promises right now. Whichever one you're buying, you're definitely investing in a lot of promises. One of them, for the TicWatch, for example, being you're going to get the WearOS 3 update, and that's coming in early 2022. Now, on the flip side, the Galaxy Watch, you're looking at some other promises here, like, for example, it's going to get Google Assistant in the future. But looking at what these have right now, because honestly, that's what matters, we have some pretty fundamental differences. The first one being, even though they're both like playing nicely together, Google and Samsung, yeah, we know, they're still trying to figure out how to play on the same team. So Samsung, the Galaxy Watch here is using Bixby, it's using Samsung Pay, where on the flip side, the TicWatch is using Google Assistant, it's using Google Pay, and so that's going to be fundamentally different. And the very obvious difference between those is that Google Assistant is far superior to Bixby. You also have a more pure WearOS on the TicWatch, which, although you don't have a lot of the Samsung features out there, you don't have the integration with the Samsung ecosystem, you do have some other advantages being, you know, some nice little features tied into here, like the wrist gestures to navigate and things of that nature. Now, of course, you don't need that on the Samsung Watch as you have that rotating bezel, but, you know, subtle differences like that. Now, other than that, though, you do have a lot of big feature advantages with the Galaxy Watch, being in the health sector. So you have so many more health tracking capabilities on the Galaxy Watch, although I would argue most of them are not used most of the time. But the ones that you do have are nice to be available. So an ECG, for example, you've got blood pressure monitoring, you have things like the body composition measurements, which I pointed out were not especially accurate, but regardless, very exciting and very nice to have that on the watch, at the very least as a baseline. We know that the Samsung Watch has more health sensors on there, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's better for tracking workouts. The TicWatch also has GPS and heart rate and blood oxygen and things like that, so let's actually get into a quick accuracy test to see how well it actually performed on a run. So looking at the maps, the TicWatch did a decent job. You can't zoom in on the map though. And then looking at the Galaxy Watch, both of these watches did miss the first beginning of the maybe 50 meters of the trail, but otherwise they did a pretty solid job of tracking it accurately. Now, getting into the heart rate, this is the Polar H10, a known accurate heart rate graph, and comparing that to the TicWatch was kind of all over the place and really struggled with intervals. The Galaxy Watch did a substantially better job, although it's still not quite perfect. And when you're using either one of these watches, you are going to have to get multiple apps. It's a little bit unfortunate, but for the TicWatch, you will have to get the Google WearOS app, which is how you set up the whole watch. Technically, you can be done after that, but it's really recommended that you get the Mobvoi app so you can do more customization, and probably some type of fitness app to really look at your analytics. So, in most situations, that'll be Google Fit. Samsung, on the other hand, is going to also require multiple apps, one of them being Samsung Wear, so you can actually set the watch up. Technically, again, you could be done after that, but if you want to see any of your analytics, which most people probably do, you'll have to get Samsung Health as well. And while nobody really likes to go installing all these apps, the good thing is if you have a Samsung phone, those apps come pre-installed anyway. If you have any other Android phone, you can still get those apps for the Galaxy Watch. But the advantage of the TicWatch is that you can actually get this on an iPhone as well. So overall, the TicWatch Pro 3 and the Galaxy Watch 4 are both very capable watches. But if you're buying either one of these right now, you're really buying a promise. You're buying the promise for the TicWatch that you're going to get WearOS 3, hopefully in the first quarter of 2022. And on the Samsung Watch, you're buying the promise that hopefully you're getting some new features on here like Google Assistant and things like that. Now, as it is right now, looking at these watches, I do prefer the Galaxy Watch. I like the overall build of it. I think the aesthetic of a watch is very important. And while I don't like the default strap that it came with, pretty much everything else I think looks fantastic. On top of that, I like how the software is laid out on here and you're in that Samsung ecosystem. Even though the TicWatch is very capable and I love having Google Assistant on there, I still kind of lean a little bit more to the Galaxy Watch. Now with that being said, if you're on a budget and you can't afford the Galaxy Watch, the TicWatch Pro 3 is a great alternative, or even cheaper than that, the TicWatch E3 is an even more budget-friendly option. And I'll have links to those reviews down below, as well as to the latest prices, so you can see exactly how much your configuration of the Galaxy Watch would actually be. Oh, and actually, this is pretty exciting. Even though these are the two best options you have right now, Fossil actually just announced their Fossil Gen 6, which is going to be an incredibly strong competitor to both of these, and it's coming out later in September. So if you guys want to see that video of my review, go down and click that subscribe button, and I will be reviewing that as soon as possible. So that's been it. That's my take on the Galaxy Watch 4 versus the TicWatch Pro 3. Like I said, I generally lean towards the Galaxy Watch, but I do love the TicWatch. It does some really fantastic stuff, and I'm sure a lot of people would find it as their preferred watch here. So leave a comment below. Let me know which of these two you prefer. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, guys, consider liking and subscribing. I'm Mike O'Brien. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.